everyone. Welcome back to Centura Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, the Broncos return back to Empower Field at Mile High in just 3 days to take on the Washington Commanders. We'll hear from all three coordinators today and cornerback Pat Surtain. Plus, Commanders senior writer Zach Selby joins the show to take a look at this matchup from the Commanders' perspective. All that and more coming up. Broncos held another day of practice here as they're now just 3 days away from their Week 2 matchup versus the Washington Commanders. And today we heard from cornerback Pat Surtain as he spoke to the media and discussed how he approaches every week and every opponent.
Yeah, scheme first. I look at it as, guys running the routes within the scheme. Certain concepts will dictate that by their splits, by the way how they align. And, you could just tell by their mannerisms off the ball, if they getting the ball or not. So, just little details like that.
Surtain also went on to talk about the Commanders' playmakers and how they'll look to defend them this Sunday.
They got two good receivers in Dawson and McLaurin. They're pretty versatile in their scheme. They can match up anywhere on the field. So, they use those guys well within their play calling style. And those are two playmakers, obviously. So, defensively, we've got everything schemed up. You got a plan for them as well, too. So, this will be an exciting matchup.
And on the other side of the ball, offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi talked today about the challenges the Commanders' defense presents.
There's 4 challenges, really. They're, I don't know if Chase Young's playing. I know that he practiced in a limited fashion yesterday, but that's 4 first-rounders who've lived up to their billing. Edges can rush, can set edges inside, really good rushers, strong. It's just no weak spots at all. So it's going to take, all the offensive linemen, tight ends, everyone in order to execute against those guys.
Plus, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy was a full participant at practice today, and Coach Lombardi talked about what it will mean to have him back out on the field on Sunday.
Yeah, he's a great route runner. So someone you feel really good when he's matched up man-to-man. So when you recognize that, someone that you look to early as a quarterback, a guy that consistently can get separation. And so just the more receivers that you have that can win those one-on-one matchups, the easier it is. So definitely be good to have him back.
Defense coordinator Vance Joseph also talked today about the Broncos' pass rush and how important it will be to get that going in Week 2.
It's absolutely important. Obviously last week we didn't have much pressure on the quarterback, and the third down, win percentage showed that. So obviously pressure on the quarterback and getting him off his spot, and winning third down is going to be critical in this game. Last week's game, the third downs is where we kind of, fell off, that and penalties. So winning third downs is always going to be for us a top priority because that limits possessions, it limits points, so that's always going to be important for us to pressure quarterbacks and to win third downs.
Now it's time to take a look at today's injury report. Tight end Greg Dulcich and outside linebacker Frank Clark did not participate at practice today. Meanwhile, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, defensive tackle DJ Jones, and cornerback Riley Moss were all full participants. Now joining me on Broncos Now is Washington Commanders senior writer Zach Selby to take a look at this weekend's matchup from the Commanders' perspective. Zach, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's been a great week so far. The one thing that I love about the NFL season is that it happens fast and slow at the same time. So all of a sudden it's Thursday, but it feels like we were going through just like a desert to get here. But actually it's gonna be my first trip to Denver.
So really?
I'm very, very excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, excited to have you here. How are things just going over there in Virginia this week? How's practice been?
Practice has been pretty good. It's obviously we're now past the first game of the new regime with Josh Harris and his group of partners taking over the franchise. Now it's more like, all right, we're just focusing on football now. Now we're past all the first of everything. And practice it's been weird because yes, like the Commanders won on Sunday 20-16, but nobody in that locker room on Sunday felt pleased at all with the way they performed. Everyone was basically like, yeah, we won. That's great. But we left a lot of opportunities out in the field and we could have done a lot better than what we put out there. And honestly, the practices and the locker room availabilities have kind of echoed that as well. Like they're not resting on their laurels, which I think maybe sometimes like this team would have done in previous years. And even Charles Leno said that, like, there are other teams that he's been on with Washington where they might have been ecstatic about getting that win, last week, and then just kind of carry that momentum over. But no, like they're saying no, like this is not up to our standards. We can be better, and I think from what I've seen in camp and what I've seen last few practices, like they can definitely be better. So I'm very interested to see what version of Washington comes to Denver this weekend.
Yeah, I know Commanders quarterback Sam Howell talked this week about that, about some of the things he wants to fix moving into week 2. But looking at his week 1 performance, Zach, what really impressed you about what he was able to do out there that maybe this Broncos defense should be on the lookout for?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think generally the bounce back ability, I think is a pretty big key for him. That's something that Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy have talked about a lot. And you saw the negatives of being a second year quarterback in his second career start, right? You had the interception, the ugly strip sack that was returned for a touchdown. Neither of those are great, but he didn't really let it rattle him. And we were talking to some people in the locker room afterwards, and we asked them like, "Hey, what did he do after these mistakes?" And they said they were like, "Yeah, okay, that's fine." Which they
Right.
all love. They all love his ability to just kind of put the past behind him and just look forward to the next drive. But in terms of what he does on the field, I've always really been impressed with his ball placement. He puts the ball in a lot of areas where only the receiver can make that catch. And there was a really nice across the field pass to Cole Turner that was exactly where it needed to be, and was had pretty good coverage on it. I think his chemistry with his receiver so far has been pretty good. We haven't seen too much of that from Terry yet, just because he's dealing with the turf toe. But him and Jahan have really developed quite a rapport, and you saw a little bit of that on Sunday. So I think his ability to look past his mistakes, his ability to scramble, also I think is pretty impressive. Plus his ability to build a rapport with receivers, he hasn't really worked that much with, has really stood out to me. That's why I think pretty highly about what he could be somewhere down the road.
Oh, well, I know Sam Howell, he was sacked 6 times in week 1. So how do you think that the Commanders are going to really look to address that this week? Because I know this Broncos defense really wants to work on their pass rush.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, those 6 sacks have been quite a topic of discussion. In fact, I have a story coming out about about those 6 sacks in general. Like, and a lot of people will say that the offensive line was the cause of that, which isn't really the case.
Right.
It's kind of when the sacks are that high, it's always on a variety of different people. Sam Howell took credit for a couple of those, and there was one on the offensive line. There was a slide protection that didn't go the way that they should have, but there was another play where Sadiq Charles, our left guard, basically tripped because he got caught up in a play with Brian Robinson, and that led to getting a sack. But I think this defensive line for Denver is obviously a big step up from what they saw in Arizona. I mean, yeah, Arizona had the effort, but not necessarily the talent to match that. Denver has both. And I think it's going to be quite the challenge to see how they react to it. And I really think that the offensive line is better than what people are giving them credit for Washington. But I think if they really want to match that, they really have to play well against a defensive line in Denver that is very hungry to show how good they really are.
For sure. Well, I know head coach Sean Payton talked about the Commanders' defensive front this week. He said they're just really active in the run game. They're athletic. I mean, they're a handful. So can you just talk about some of those guys up front for you guys and what makes them such a dominant unit?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they were probably the number one reason why the Commanders were able to pull back from being down 16-10 in the closing seconds of the third quarter. And the biggest thing about them is, yeah, we've all known that they're talented, right? I mean, we have 4 first-rounders. Like, there's no way they're not talented. But the thing is, like, they're actually all starting to work cohesively together. And you saw that a little bit of that in previous years. Year 2 is kind of the biggest regression from that, where they were all sort of not paying too much attention to their run discipline and they weren't being in their rush lanes as much as they should. Now they're all playing as a concrete unit. When you have players that are that talented playing all together, it creates a lot of problems for a lot of offensive linemen. And I think the biggest player who played the most importantly is Montez Sweat, who I mean had two forced fumbles there, a sack and a half, 5 tackles. I mean, the biggest thing with him is that Jack Del Rio has always been trying to tell his defensive lineman, look, we need you to finish, we need you to get there, we need you to finish plays, and you're finally seeing that from Montez Sweat. You saw it from Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen in years past, but now Montez Sweat is finishing the plays, which is big for him because he's always been there. He's always been a very talented rusher, but he hasn't had the sacks to match the quarterback's hits of the pressures. Now he's started to get that. And with a contract year coming up for him, I mean, that he's playing very motivated. I mean, you can tell that, and it's very impressive to watch what he can do.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a challenge for this offensive line on Sunday. Zach, I know Commanders head coach Ron Rivera talked about Sean Payton's offenses this week, just that they're really diverse. You know, he utilizes a lot of his playmakers really well. So like you mentioned before, I know the Commanders defense are coming off a really dominant performance, but how do you think they'll approach this week in this game plan?
Well, I'm still sort of watching the film from where they played the Raiders last week, and I mean, yeah, you're right. Ron Rivera has a lot of respect for what Sean Payton has done. I looked back at their records together, and while Sean Payton does have a 1-game advantage over him, when he with the New Orleans Saints, most of their matchups were decided by like 8 points or fewer. So it's going to be very competitive, and it looks like they're gonna rely on a knowledge of a system that uses a lot of running backs, a lot of play action,
Yeah.
a lot of getting the ball out to your best players. And I know with Jerry Jeudy out last week, they did the best of what they could. Samaje Perine, a guy that Washington fans know pretty well. He had some really good moments. That running game in general, I thought looked pretty impressive to me. And I know Dolchich being out is a big blow, but I mean, I think Russell Wilson's still going to use his tight ends a lot. And I think this defense has the secondary to match that. I mean, we have Cam Curl, who is so versatile and be able to play against tight ends like that. I think you feel pretty confident about your matchups with them. They also have a lot of speed on the outside with Emmanuel Forbes, and Benjamin St. Juste has the size and quickness to match up against some of these slot options. I think they're going to come into the thing. They're going to play close to the line of scrimmage, but also be aware of the fact that they can make big plays downfield because Russell Wilson still has the arm to do so. But again, like I think Washington's going into Denver feeling pretty good about what they can accomplish.
Well, last one here for you, Zach. I know the Commanders have lost 3 straight road games to the Broncos here in Denver, as they continue to prepare for this road trip. Kind of mentioned this earlier, but what's been the feeling or the vibe around the team in the locker room?
Yeah, and I'll even say further, like they've only won twice in their all-time series with at Denver. So like that's
gets to them.
Yeah, yeah. I think the altitude gets to a lot of people there. But yeah, I think they're going into it thinking that like again, like we said earlier, like yes, they won and they're all happy that they won. But
Right.
they're going into this. They're going into this thing. All right, this is the next level of competition that we're going to be facing. And I really do believe that they think they've got a chance for sure. But they all acknowledge like, hey, we need to play better because the 20-16 effort we gave against the Arizona Cardinals is not going to be good enough to beat the Denver Broncos, who are perennially in playoff contention all the time with that really good defense they have. And now Russell Wilson finally starting to show a little bit of what he was whenever he's with Seattle. So yeah, I think they're going into it realizing that like they're building some momentum, but they're not quite there yet. And I think they view it as another measuring stick for them to show how good they can actually be.
For sure. Well, excited for the matchup this weekend. Zach, appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, appreciate having me. I can't wait to see you in Denver.
And Broncos fans, don't forget, Paramount Plus is your streaming home for every local NFL and CBS game this season. Visit ParamountPlus.com to start your free trial and stream Russell Wilson and the team as they battle the league's best. Plus, get an all-access pass to 24/7 NFL content with CBS Sports HQ, Fantasy Football Today, NFL Slime Time, and more. And this year, Paramount Plus is your streaming destination for Super Bowl 58. Another action-packed Broncos season with NFL and CBS awaits. So stream Paramount Plus all season long from any device. Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for a game preview. I'll see you all then.